Hello, this is BSJ, and this video is going to give you a general idea of what it means to be a carry and what your job is as a carry. In general, a carry is a hero that has the greatest impact as the game goes on into the late game. Your job in the early game is to not die, pretty much, and get the farm that you need, however you need to do that in order to properly scale with your items. And then as the game goes on, it's your job to not die again, but in this time not necessarily in the laning stage, but getting picked off. You want to be around your team when necessary. You want to show up to team fights when necessary, and you are really the highest priority in terms of farm. If there's safe farm and you're a hero that's not escapable, something like a Spectre, then you'd rather take the safe farm. But if you're a more aggressive hero, then it's your job to take that farm. Heroes like Slark, Ember Spirit, those that can be much more escapable and maneuverable around the map. Your job as a carry is to take the appropriate farm and then to deal the most amount of damage out of anyone on your team in the late stages of the game. The reason why carry is so popular in terms of why everyone wants to do it is because most games, no matter how well you do as a support, your job is to complement your carry and to protect your carry. And it doesn't matter how well you protect your carry if your carry has no items and does not do what they need to do. So it's almost impossible to win because you don't really deal out as much damage most of the time. So even though you can do the proper maneuvers as the game goes on as a support, you will fall off. So your carry will end up losing you the game. But as a carry, even if your supports don't necessarily do the best job, your hero will scale as the game goes on regardless. And as long as you get a decent amount of items up, even if it's less because your supports aren't quite as good as they should be, you'll have a lot higher impact. So people tend to favor playing carry because they get quote-unquote tired of dealing with carries that don't know what they're doing. And even if a support doesn't know what they're doing, it's not nearly as big of a deal, especially at below the 4K mark. The carries pretty much reign supreme at lower MMRs because nobody knows how to properly punish the heroes that are weak in the early game. That's also usually a signature trait of a carry hero. Generally speaking, not always, but the better the hero is later on, the weaker they are early. So heroes like Spectre are super weak early on, and then they scale to be one of the strongest late game carries. On the other hand, hero like Gyrocopter or Ember, while they are strong carry potentials, aren't necessarily as weak early on, so they're not as strong later on. It's a similar thing for almost every carry in the game. So it's very important to know as the carry when your peak is, necessarily meaning if you're a BKB carry, necessarily you should know if I get a BKB, I'm much stronger than the enemy team. If you are a hero like Spectre, you know that once you get your Radiance, you're very strong. When you're a hero like Slark, once you get your Shadow Blade, you're much stronger. Heroes that require Blink Dagger generally hit their power spike, and it's really important to utilize that power spike as a carry and to know that, hey, if I'm playing Alchemist, and even though I can get 6 slotted very quickly, if I get 6 slotted and I don't end the game before their carry is 6 slotted, then I will obviously fall off because none of my abilities cater to being a late game hero. So it's really important as the carry to not only recognize how much farm you need, where you need to farm, but also when you're strong and being able to properly either shut down the enemy carry from farming or simply even end the game by taking objectives like towers and Roche and trying to get your team to group up when the other team can't necessarily fight you. So it's really important also as a carry to recognize if your 5-man or their 5-man is stronger. And what that means for you is if they're 5-man stronger and you're a little bit behind as a carry, your way of coming back is not trying to fight them head on. It's your job to try to split push. If your carries like Ember Spirit and Slark, they're not necessarily strong at 5-man team fighting. Heroes like Gyro are much stronger when it comes to team fighting. So when you look at these kind of heroes, you need to know, like, if I'm 5-man hero and I can't possibly split push, I'll just keep dying, then your way of coming back is fighting them. But if you're a hero like Ember Spirit or Slark, it's your way of coming back is by splitting them apart and trying to make them not 5-man. So it's really important to not only recognize your strength as a carry, but also recognize the enemy team's strengths. If they're a high pick-off potential team, say they have something like a Bounty Hunter or a Riki or even like a Legion Commander, heroes like that can be very frustrating in pubs to deal with, then it's most likely to your advantage to, no matter what the situation of the game is, to play more group-oriented so that they cannot pick you off. As a carry, it's not usually your job to direct your team, but it's important to tell your team when you're strong. So most of the time, you shouldn't have to really worry about telling your team what to do, other than simply saying, hey, like, we're strong enough to take a tier 1 tower mid. Can I get some help? And I can tell you in PUBG that's not always going to happen. Whatever you think is best or whatever you're strong, it's not generally going to happen every time. So it's on you to pretty much decide, hey, if I want to push this tier 1 tower, but I don't have any help, and I know I need help, then I probably shouldn't do it, even if it's the best thing to do. So a lot of the times, if your team wants to fight, and you know you're a hero like Slark or Ember that can't team fight very well, especially with very little items, it's pretty much your job to let them fight and hope they don't necessarily feed, and maybe look for kill cleanup. Meaning, like, if the fight's already kind of over, your team's died like 3 or 4, and they still have a bunch of low health heroes, maybe you can look to TP in and, I would kind of say, scavenge the kills. Hopefully get some cleanup kills without dying yourself. On a carry in particular, it's one of the most costly things you can do is die. Dying pretty much sets your farm back 3 or 4 minutes pretty much every time you do it. It varies also what hero you're playing, because heroes like Alchemist that farm super fast, your amount of gold intake will be set back even further by dying. So as a carry, it's worth missing CS in order not to die. Or it's like on a support, it's worth killing it, getting a tower last hit, even if you die for it. In general, the only time it's really worth dying as a carry is if they lose 3 or 4 heroes by trying to kill you. Other than that, your job as a carry is really the most important one, is not dying in all stages of the game. In the early stages, it's so that you get your farm up, and in the late stages, it's because you're the most impactful, most damage-dealing hero, and if you die, the threat towards the enemy team is much less, and they can usually either end the game if you don't have buyback, or take significant objectives, either like a barracks or a Roshan into a barracks during your death, because you're the highest level, your death will be the longest, and obviously you have the highest impact in the game. I hope you enjoyed this video on what it means to be a carry, and if you want to learn more, feel free to check out the other videos on more detailed descriptions.